alongside the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who will be co-hosting the Gaza Summit. And there are some critics who are saying that this is just for optics. What is important is what will be discussed at the summit, and if what will be discussed at the summit will be fruitful. Nader Hashemi is an associate professor of Middle East and Islamic politics at Georgetown University. Is now joining us live from Washington, D.C. Mr. Hashemi, thank you very much for making time for us, and welcome to this broadcast. The first phase
Thank you.
Seems very positive. It has been covered. It's all over now. I think what is more important now is post this phase. In your own opinion, who or what is required to take this ceasefire deal forward?
Well, fundamentally, what's required is for Hamas, which still is still in power in Gaza, to agree to Donald Trump's 20-point plan. And they have not done that. All they've agreed to was phase one, in exchange for humanitarian aid and a release of Palestinian prisoners, that they would release Israeli hostages. Mm-hmm. So what's required is more diplomacy, more political engagement, to get one of the key parties to this dispute, Hamas, to sign on to Donald Trump's peace plan. And everything that I've read and studied with respect to the dynamics of the Israel-Palestine conflict and the politics of Hamas suggests that they will not agree to disarm, because from their perspective, it would mean voluntary suicide. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying here is that I don't think this grand statement and speech that Trump has announced today, with support from many countries in the region and in the West, that we've arrived at peace in the Middle East, mm-hmm. is going to happen. I predict that roughly a few weeks from now, when all is said and done and the first phase is over, that we're going to see the restarting of the war in Gaza. And of course, it's going to be the Palestinians in Gaza who will pay the biggest price.
Mr. Hashemi, stay with me. Susan Teherani is also with us. She's live in New York. Susan, there has been a lot of talk about what happens next, because there's some critics. I understand we've lost Susan. But Mr. Hashemi, coming back to you, there are some issues here, including the disarmament of Hamas and the withdrawal of Israel from these territories around Gaza. And we also have the governance of Gaza. These issues, how will they be handled going forward?
Well, they're supposed to, if you look at Trump's plan, the governance of Gaza is supposed to take place under the authority and the leadership of an international trusteeship headed by Tony Blair, the former British Prime Minister. And he's supposed to provide the overall guidance for the future of Gaza. And there will be some Palestinian administrators who effectively will deal with local political issues such as garbage collection, sanitation, and healthcare. But all of that is predicated on the disarmament of Hamas and the insertion into Gaza of this international stabilization force, mm-hmm. comprised of Arab and Muslim countries, who will go in to take over from Hamas, thus allowing for a new governance structure to emerge. That's what the plan calls for. Mm-hmm. I don't see it happening because Hamas is not willing to give up its arms. I don't see Arab and Muslim countries sending troops in to fight other Muslims in Gaza, effectively trying to do what Netanyahu was unable to accomplish, and that is to militarily defeat Hamas. Mm-hmm. So I don't see this going very far. And that's fundamentally because, despite all of this optimism that we all have about, a resolution of this conflict, the fundamental core aspect of the Israel-Palestine conflict has not been dealt with in Trump's peace plan. And that is the question of occupation. That is the question that one of the two parties into this conflict are still, not only are they denied their basic inalienable rights to statehood, but they are even denied the right to participate in a peace plan. Donald Trump's peace plan took place without any Palestinian any Palestinian input. Even the pro-American Palestinians in Ramallah, the one that the United States supports and wants to reform and hopes to bring back to Gaza, they weren't even consulted. So when you have a peace plan where one of the two parties to the conflict are not involved, have not provided any input, and it's the other side, the Israelis, who basically crafted the peace plan based on their own political and security interests, that's not a recipe for peace and stability. It's a recipe for more war.
Dr. Hashemi, let's now focus on what you're seeing on your screens right now, the optics of what is happening in Egypt. Over 20 world leaders have been invited for this Gaza summit. What do you derive from that number of world leaders being invited to this summit? And what do you think is Donald Trump's objective?
Well, Donald Trump's objective primarily is to win a Nobel Peace Prize. He missed the last announcement. He's hoping for next year. Donald Trump loves the limelight. I mean, you recall when in his first term where he loved this 2 summit meetings that he had with the notorious dictator of North Korea. Donald Trump doesn't know much about the Israel-Palestine conflict. I'm willing to bet if he had to identify the Gaza Strip on a map, he couldn't do so. So this is a lot about Donald Trump's own ego. He loves the praise. He loves the adulation. All these other countries that are there, I think, are there largely to cater to Donald Trump because he's the president of the most powerful country in the world. So let me just cite one example. So Canada has sent its prime minister there, Mark Carney. Mark Carney is there, I think, primarily because there is a major crisis in Canada-U.S. relations related to massive tariffs that Donald Trump has imposed on Canada in violation to an existing economic agreement that Canada had with the United States. And he's trying to cater to Trump, hoping that Trump will lift those tariffs so the Canadian economy won't sink further into crisis mode.
Right.
This has very little to do with the dynamics of what a just resolution of the Israel-Palestine conflict should look like. And you can just note the complete absence of any reference to international law. There is no reference to international law. This is very much about a U.S. and Israeli plan being imposed on the Palestinians and other Arab dictators and Western leaders trying to cater and cozy up to Donald Trump, giving a stamp of approval to Donald Trump's plan.
Dr. Hashemi, so what needs to happen now? And we're talking about Gaza because, okay, there's a peace deal that has been signed. It's going to be signed any moment from now. But moving on from what has happened in Gaza, 67,000 Palestinians have been killed. Over 2,000 Israelis have been killed in this war. What does Gaza need immediately? And how is Gaza going to get what it needs?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Let's be clear. Gaza today no longer exists. To quote Donald Trump, it's a demolition site. If you look at the pictures of Gaza, it looks like Hiroshima after World War II when the United States dropped an atomic bomb. It cannot sustain life. According to the United Nations, it would take 15 years just to clear the rubble from Gaza before you can build anything on top of it. And you have thousands of people who have not been accounted for, probably tens of thousands of people. Gaza is a massive war crime site. So the ability to sustain life and to build something new on top of what Israel and the United States and the West have done to Gaza is a fantasy. So what Gaza needs right now is there's a famine there. A genocide has been taking place there. It has been paused because of the ceasefire. So immediately what Gaza needs is food and humanitarian aid to prevent the famine from spreading. Mm-hmm. But fundamentally what's needed is a realistic plan to save the people of Gaza, to give them their basic rights that they're entitled to under international law. And that requires an Israeli withdrawal to its international borders and a serious plan for rebuilding and reconstructing Gaza. Even if we were to get to that ultimate state that's, a different scenario, a different peace plan, rooted in international law, rooted in an Israeli withdrawal to the 67 borders, rooted in Palestinians governing their own affairs, it would be impossible in this best case scenario to envision a future for Gaza, given the devastation that I just described. 92% of all the homes are destroyed. Most of the hospitals have been destroyed. Gaza cannot sustain life because of the devastation that has been visited upon Gaza by the Israeli army, supported by the United States and other Western countries. So that's the fundamental reality of Gaza. So all of this celebration that we're seeing today seems to ignore what I've just described. So I think that's the fundamental issue that we're facing.
Professor Hashemi, stay with me. He's an associate professor of Middle East and Islamic politics at Georgetown University. And what you're seeing on your screen is the beginning of the second whirlwind tour of President Donald Trump. He has just arrived at the resort, the much talked about resort of Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. And he's about to enter the hall alongside his co-host, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. And any moment from now, the discussions are set to begin at Sharm el-Sheikh. Professor Nader, coming back to you, Israel got their hostages, the 20 of them, living. Do you think Israel is in a better bargaining position when it comes to issues with Hamas?
Well, yes, because Israel is 1,000,000 times more powerful than Hamas, politically, militarily, economically, so there's no comparison there. Most importantly, Hamas has given up its leverage over Israel because it's given up the hostages. And the big question is, what have they received in return? There are reports, unconfirmed, that Donald Trump has sent messages to Hamas that he will prevent Israel from restarting the war. If I were a Palestinian living in Gaza, I wouldn't count on that guarantee from Donald Trump. Let's recall that in January of this year, there was a ceasefire that Donald Trump negotiated and imposed on Israel. Hostages were released, humanitarian aid went into Gaza, and then after 2 months, Israel unilaterally broke that ceasefire on March the 18th, and the war started with increased devastation, and Donald Trump let it happen. So if the past is prologue, as they say, there's no reason to believe that this ceasefire and this current phase one is going to last very long. So I'm not optimistic about where this is all headed. I think there's a lot of room for skepticism. And I think we are, watching obviously good news that Israelis are being released. They've been, the hostages have been living in horrible conditions. Over 2,000 Palestinians have been released. They are effectively hostages, although we don't call them hostages, but they're being reunited with their family. Very good. But until and unless the fundamental core issues of this conflict that are rooted in occupation and the ongoing systematic denial by the United States and Israel, and I would also argue many countries in the West, of the basic human and national rights of the Palestinians, unless that is addressed within the framework of international law, we are going to be talking about this conflict for a very, very long time. The last point I'll make is that, the road to October the 7th and the attack that Israel suffered, the brutal attack by Hamas, and then the subsequent Israeli assault, that road to October the 7th was paved by many U.S. peace plans going back to Jimmy Carter. There's a long history of these peace plans supported by the United States, thinking that this will solve the Israel-Palestine conflict and bring peace to the Middle East. All of them have failed, and they all have failed for the reasons that I just mentioned. The absence of addressing the core issue of this conflict, the question of occupation, the question of the denial of the basic human and national rights of the Palestinian people, and the absence of any interest by the United States and the West of using an international law framework to guide diplomacy and with the goal of solving this conflict. That's I think, the problem here.
Professor Hashemi, you bring up a very important point there, and I just want to extend it and expound on it, because there has been a lot of doubt over the governance of Gaza post-war. What do you think, or how do you think Gaza will look like, or should look like, with the set of governance? Maybe you can also suggest what kind of governance system should Gaza have?
Well, first of all, Gaza should be governed by Gazans. It shouldn't be governed by Tony Blair. It's actually quite revealing that over 100 years after the British mandate in Palestine, we are back to where we started, where the British, backed by the Americans, are now presiding over a new neo-imperial and neo-colonial mandate for Palestine, where Palestinians are not given their basic national rights. And just like 100 years ago, the international community is saying that, the natives are not prepared for independence and governance now, but if they behave nicely, then maybe we will grant them an independent state somewhere down the road. But that's conditional on their good behavior. So what should happen is international law should be applied. Gazans and the Palestinians should determine their own governing structure. And fundamentally, if I had any say in this equation, I would say that one of the priorities of Gaza today is to preserve all of these devastation and sites where there have been massive war crimes and crimes against humanity taking place. One of the things that should happen is we need an influx of war crimes investigators and forensic experts to protect Gaza. Gaza now is a massive war crime site. There has to be accountability for what has happened. The ordinances, the lost life, the people who still just disappeared and are likely under the rubble should be part of any just resolution of the war in Gaza. And the fact that it isn't just highlights, I think, how distorted Donald Trump's peace plan is and how it will reproduce the conditions that resulted in this war. It won't produce the type of peace that I think many of us would like to see.
That's right, Professor. Professor Nader Hashemi, thank you very much for talking to us today on WION World is One.